The unexpected welcome Admiral Crix stood on the command deck of the Devastator, his crimson eyes scanning the blue marble that hung in the darkness before his fleet. Earth looked so peaceful from this distance, its white clouds swirling over green continents like a child's toy spinning in space. He had seen countless worlds like this one during his 40 years of service to the Zephyrian Empire. Some had purple skies, others had twin suns, but they all shared one thing in common. They all fell within 72 hours. The bridge hung. With quiet efficiency, as his crew prepared for another routine conquest. Tactical officers updated weapon systems, while communications specialists monitored the primitive electromagnetic signals coming from the planet below. Everything proceeded according to standard invasion protocols that had proven successful across 200 worlds. The humans of Earth possessed nuclear weapons, but their delivery systems were laughably slow. They had spacecraft, but nothing capable of challenging ships that could cross galaxies. Their armies looked impressive on their entertainment broadcasts. But ground forces meant nothing against orbital bombardment. Dr. Sarah Chun adjusted her coffee mug and settled in for another quiet night at the Arecibo Deep Space Observatory. She had spent 12 years searching for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth, analyzing radio signals and scanning the cosmos for anything unusual. Most evenings brought nothing but cosmic background radiation and the occasional satellite. Malfunction. Tonight felt different. Her screens showed energy signatures that defied explanation. Massive objects were moving through the outer solar system in perfect formation, each one larger than any city on Earth. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for the emergency communication device mounted beside her workstation. She had practiced this moment countless times during training exercises, but never believed she would actually use it. The red phone connected directly to the United Nations Security Council, bypassing all normal channels and protocols. Within minutes, her call reached Secretary General Elena Vasquez at the Emergency Command Center in Geneva. The Security Council chamber filled quickly as world leaders, joined via secure video links from every continent. President Maria Santos watched from the White House Situation Room, while Prime Minister David Fletcher participated from Downing Street. Chancellor Wei Liu connected from Beijing as Premier Yuki Tanaka joined from Tokyo. They all stared at the same satellite images showing enormous alien vessels arranged in textbook military formation. Approaching Earth. President Santos felt her stomach tighten as she studied the tactical reports spreading across her desk. Each alien ship measured over 3 kilometers in length, with hull configurations clearly designed for warfare. Weapon ports lined their surfaces like black eyes, and their energy signatures indicated technology centuries beyond human capabilities. Any conventional military response would result in complete annihilation within hours. Secretary-General Vasquez called for immediate recommendations from the assembled leaders. Chancellor Liu suggested activating all nuclear arsenals for a coordinated first strike. Prime Minister Fletcher recommended evacuation of major population centers to underground shelters. Premier Tanaka proposed attempting diplomatic contact before considering military options. The debate continued for hours while the alien fleet drew closer to Earth. President Santos listened to each proposal, but something felt fundamentally wrong about all their approaches. Every plan involved either hiding or fighting, both strategies. That assumed the aliens were implacable enemies who could not be reasoned with. She had built her political career on the belief that most conflicts arose from misunderstanding and that even the most difficult situations could be resolved through genuine communication. Admiral Crix authorized transmission of the standard conquest ultimatum that had broken the will of every previous target species. The message would broadcast simultaneously across all human communication frequencies in their dominant languages, translated by computers that had perfected the art of psychological warfare. The words were carefully chosen to inspire maximum despair while offering false hope through surrender. The transmission began exactly noon. Greenwich Mean Time. Television programs stopped mid-broadcast as the alien signal overrode every satellite and terrestrial network on the planet. Radio stations went silent as the deep, emotionless voice spoke in perfect English, Spanish, Mandarin, and dozens of other languages simultaneously. The message was brief and terrifying in its clinical precision. People of Earth, your world has been selected for incorporation into the Zephyrian Empire. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Prepare your leaders for transfer to imperial custody. Prepare your populations for relocation and service. Any resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your planet. This transmission will repeat until your compliance is confirmed. Across Earth, billions of people stopped what they were doing and listened to words that changed everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe. In offices and homes, in schools and hospitals, in cities and remote villages, humans heard the same message and tried to understand that their world had just been claimed by strangers from the stars. Santu stood in the White House Situation Room and felt the weight of human civilization pressing down on her shoulders. In 72 hours, she would need to provide an answer that would determine whether her species lived as slaves or died as martyrs. Around the conference table, her advisors waited for orders that could save Earth or doom it to nuclear fire. Deep in her mind, an idea was forming that none of the world leaders had suggested. Instead of meeting the aliens with weapons or surrender, what if Earth responded with something completely unexpected? What if they met them with the one thing that made humans different from every other species they had encountered in their exploration of space? What if they met them with genuine kindness? The alien ultimatum played repeatedly for 6 hours before President Santos made her decision. While other world leaders activated military assets and prepared for either war or capitulation, she did something that surprised everyone in the Situation Room. She told the Joint Chiefs of Staff to stand down all military forces and ordered the Secretary of State to prepare a response that would either save humanity or mark them as the strangest species in galactic history. The President's plan seemed impossible to her advisors. Instead of tanks and fighter jets, Earth would send cargo ships filled with food, medicine, and cultural gifts. Instead of threats and ultimatums, they would broadcast messages of welcome and friendship. Instead of preparing for war, they would organize the largest cultural festival in human history to greet their visitors properly. Defense Secretary Johnson argued that the aliens possessed overwhelming firepower and obvious hostile intent. They had demanded surrender and threatened genocide. Responding with hospitality seemed like civilizational suicide wrapped in naive optimism. But President Santos remained firm in her conviction that meeting violence with violence would only guarantee Earth's destruction. The orders went out within hours, through channels that had never been used for anything like this mission. Every major airline received requests to volunteer aircraft for cargo delivery to alien ships. Shipping companies found themselves asked to transport cultural artifacts and food supplies to orbital coordinates. Military transport planes were loaded not with weapons, but with musical instruments, art supplies, and medical equipment. Captain Rebecca Martinez had spent 15 years flying cargo planes for the Air Force, delivering supplies to disaster zones and military bases around the world. She had never been asked to fly humanitarian aid to an alien invasion fleet. Her manifest included fresh fruits from every continent, medical supplies, books translated into mathematical and pictorial languages, and thousands of handwritten welcome letters from school children. The letters had started arriving at government offices within hours of the President's announcement. Children from every nation wrote messages of greeting to the alien visitors. Some drew pictures of humans and aliens playing games together. Others offered to share their favorite foods or teach alien children how to ride bicycles. Many simply said they hoped the aliens were not too tired from traveling so far, and that Earth would be a comfortable place to rest. Dr. Amanda Rodriguez worked at the University of California as a linguistic anthropologist specializing in cross-cultural communication theory. She had spent her career studying how different societies might establish peaceful contact, but she never expected to put her theories into practice with actual extraterrestrial beings. The government asked her to lead the human delegation that would approach the alien fleet with Earth's unprecedented response. Dr. Rodriguez spent sleepless hours preparing for what might be the most important conversation in human history. She studied the alien ultimatum for clues about their communication patterns and cultural assumptions. The message was perfectly translated, but emotionally cold, suggesting a species that viewed conquest as natural and resistance as futile. She wondered if they had ever encountered a civilization that responded to threats with invitations to dinner. Admiral Crix monitored human activity through his ship's advanced sensors with growing bewilderment. His intelligence officers reported massive movement of aircraft and watercraft, but none carried weapons or showed defensive formations. Instead, human vessels were launching from every major spaceport and heading directly toward his fleet carrying cargo that made no tactical sense. The first wave of human ships approached the Zephyrian fleet 18 hours after the ultimatum expired. Captain Martinez led 12 cargo aircraft in loose formation as they climbed toward the alien flagship. Her radio crackled with transmissions from air traffic control, but the communications were unlike anything she had heard in military operations. Instead of tactical updates and threat assessments, she heard reminders to confirm that she had enough fresh bread for the alien crew and questions about whether the visitors might enjoy chocolate. Lieutenant Zara monitored human communications from the alien bridge and reported increasingly strange developments to Admiral Crix. The approaching human vessels were broadcasting music instead of surrender terms. Their pilots discussed meal preparations and cultural exchange programs rather than military strategy. One pilot asked his control tower whether the aliens might be interested in learning to play chess because his daughter thought they looked intelligent. The human formation stopped just outside weapons range and waited patiently for permission to approach. Captain Martinez activated her communication system and broadcast on all frequencies in a calm voice that sounded more like someone giving directions to lost travelers than addressing potential conquerors. She explained that Earth had prepared supplies for the alien crew and requested permission to deliver them safely. Admiral Crix had commanded fleets through battles across 40 star systems. He had faced desperate last stands, cunning ambushes, and suicidal counterattacks from dozens of species. He had never faced enemies who offered to cook meals for his soldiers or asked if they needed medical attention. The situation fell outside every tactical manual and military protocol in the Zephyrian database. Dr. Rodriguez joined the transmission from the lead diplomatic vessel, speaking slowly and clearly using simple concepts that universal translation systems could process easily. She welcomed the Zephyrians to Earth's solar system and acknowledged that they must be exhausted from their long journey across space. She offered medical assistance, comfortable accommodations, and the opportunity to experience human culture. Before making any final decisions about Earth's future, the offer was so unexpected that Admiral Crix required several minutes to formulate a response. In his 4 decades of military service, primitive civilizations had always responded to superior force with either terrified submission or desperate aggression. They never offered room service and cultural exchange programs to their potential conquerors. Meanwhile, something remarkable was happening across Earth's surface. Instead of panic and chaos, humans were organizing the largest international celebration in their species' history. Times Square filled with musicians playing songs from every nation, while volunteers prepared food representing every culture on The planet. London's Trafalgar Square became a massive art exhibition where children created welcome murals for their alien visitors' dock in Tokyo. Engineers worked around the clock, building translation devices and cultural interface programs. Paris transformed into an open-air museum showcasing human achievement in science, art, and philosophy. Rio de Janeiro organized dance performances while artists painted murals depicting cooperation between species. Sydney prepared educational exhibits about Earth's biodiversity and human civilization. News reporter Jennifer Walsh broadcast live from Central Park, where 50,000 people had gathered for an impromptu concert and festival. Musicians played everything from classical symphonies to traditional folk songs, while families shared picnic meals and children played games designed to welcome visitors from space. The scene looked more like a celebration of first contact than a response to potential extinction. Jennifer interviewed families who explained that they wanted the aliens to see the best of humanity rather than the worst. The festival atmosphere spread to every continent as humans demonstrated their capacity for hope and hospitality, even in the face of overwhelming uncertainty about their future. Admiral Crix received reports from his entire fleet describing similar scenes across the planet. Human cities were not preparing for war or mass evacuation. They were preparing for the biggest welcome party in galactic history. His weapons officers reported no military targets presenting themselves for attack. His intelligence officers found no strategic installations going into defensive mode. Instead, humans everywhere seemed to be cooking, singing, and creating art as if preparing to greet long-awaited friends. The Admiral made a decision that would change both species forever. He authorized limited contact with the human delegation under heavy security protocols. Their ships could dock with his flagship, carrying minimal crew and only the cultural supplies they had declared. Any sign of deception or hostile intent would result in immediate termination. But something about their persistent friendliness made him curious about these strange beings who met warships with welcome banners. As the first human delegation prepared to board an alien vessel, both species faced a moment that would reshape their understanding of what was possible. When strangers met in the darkness between stars, the Zephyrians expected either submission or rebellion from their conquest targets. The humans offered neither. Instead, they offered something the Empire had never encountered in 2 centuries of expansion across the galaxy. They offered genuine friendship to beings who had arrived as enemies, and they did it with handmade gifts and homemade meals prepared with care for travelers far from home. When hearts changed the galaxy, Rodriguez stepped through the airlock of Admiral Crix's flagship, with her pulse racing but her expression calm and welcoming. The corridor beyond was vast and imposing, with walls that seemed to absorb light and floors that felt warm beneath her feet. Strange symbols glowed softly along the ceiling, while the air carried scents of metal and something she could not identify. Behind her, Chef Antonio Reeves carried containers of fresh bread that filled the alien hallway with the comforting aroma of home baking. The Zephyrians who escorted them were tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and large silver eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They wore uniforms that appeared both military and ceremonial, decorated with rank insignia that pulsed with soft luminescence. They moved with fluid grace, but maintained careful distance from the human delegation, as if uncertain whether their visitors were dangerous or simply unprecedented in galactic history. Admiral Crix waited in a conference chamber large enough to hold several hundred beings. The table appeared to be carved from a single piece of dark crystal that reflected the ceiling lights like still water. Dr. Rodriguez approached with her hands visible and empty, following first contact protocols that seemed almost comical given the circumstances. She was supposed to establish peaceful intentions with beings who had threatened to destroy her entire world. The Admiral was clearly a veteran of many campaigns. with scars along his neck and arms that suggested decades of military service. His uniform carried more decorative elements than the other Zephyrians, and his bearing showed the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. When he spoke, his voice was deep and measured, with each word chosen for maximum impact. Dr. Rodriguez began with the greetings she had prepared during the flight to the alien ship. She thanked Admiral Crix for allowing the human delegation aboard and expressed Earth's sincere hope that their species could find common ground despite their different origins. She explained that humans believed most conflicts arose from misunderstanding, and that honest communication could solve problems that weapons only made worse. The Admiral listened without interruption, but Dr. Rodriguez could see confusion in his large silver eyes. He asked direct questions about Earth's military capabilities and strategic resources. He wanted to understand why humans had sent chefs instead of generals and musicians instead of soldiers. Dr. Rodriguez realized that the Zephyrians had no framework for comprehending species that responded to threats with offers of friendship and cultural exchange. Chef Reeves opened his containers, and the smell of fresh bread filled the conference chamber. He had baked during the journey using portable equipment, and the loaves were still warm from the oven. He offered samples to Admiral Crix and his officers while explaining that sharing food was how humans showed care for others, especially travelers who had journeyed far from home. The Zephyrians examined the bread carefully before tasting it with obvious caution. Dr. Rodriguez watched their expressions change as they realized the food was not only safe but genuinely delicious. She saw something shift in their silver eyes, a flicker of surprise that suggested they had never expected their conquest targets to demonstrate such thoughtful hospitality. Nurse Patricia Williams asked permission to examine any crew members who might need medical attention after their long journey through space. She explained that interstellar travel often caused health problems that were easily treated with proper knowledge and supplies. The Zephyrians exchanged glances before Admiral Crix admitted that several young crew members had been suffering from a mysterious illness that their medical officers could not diagnose. The first patient was a young Zephyrian who appeared barely past adolescence, looking weak and tired in a way that transcended species boundaries. Patricia examined him gently while asking questions about symptoms and diet through the translation system. Her medical scanners revealed nutritional deficiencies that were common among space travelers who relied on processed food supplies for extended periods. Engineer Marcus Thompson showed the Zephyrian technical officers his tablet containing innovations that Earth wanted to share freely with their visitors. The designs included improved life support systems, more efficient food processing equipment, and entertainment programs that could help maintain morale during long space voyages. He explained that humans believed technology should improve life for everyone, not just provide military advantages over others. Admiral Crix observed these interactions with growing bewilderment that challenged everything he thought he knew about inferior species. His people had conquered dozens of worlds over the past 2 centuries, but had never encountered beings who offered gifts to their conquerors. The human medical officer was treating Zephyrian patients as carefully as she would treat her own people. The human engineer was sharing valuable technology without requesting anything in return. The conference continued for hours as both species learned about each other in ways neither had anticipated. Dr. Rodriguez discovered that the Zephyrian Empire had been expanding for centuries, absorbing other civilizations through conquest or the threat of complete destruction. The Zephyrians possessed incredible technology and sophisticated social organization, but their culture was built entirely around the philosophy that strength determined the right to rule. Admiral Crix found himself fascinated by human stories about cooperation, creativity, and the belief that different perspectives made societies stronger rather than weaker. He learned about Earth's history of conflict and reconciliation, about how humans had gradually developed systems for resolving disputes without destroying each other. The concept seemed naive to someone raised in an empire built on domination, but there was something compelling about their optimistic worldview. Young Lieutenant Zara approached Dr. Rodriguez hesitantly and asked about the children's letters that had been included in the supply shipments. She wanted to understand why human offspring would write welcome messages to beings they had never met and had reason to fear. Dr. Rodriguez explained that human children were naturally curious about the universe and excited by the possibility of making new friends, even with visitors from distant stars. Lieutenant Zara admitted that she had never received a personal letter from anyone, let alone from children of another species, welcoming her to their world. In Zephyrian society, personal communications were restricted to official military channels and family obligations. The idea of strangers expressing genuine interest in her well-being seemed almost incomprehensible, but also strangely appealing. Chef Reeves prepared a full meal using ingredients from the supply ships, creating dishes that represented different human cultures, while being carefully adapted for Zephyrian dietary requirements. He worked in the alien galley alongside curious crew members who had never seen food prepared with such attention to flavor and presentation, rather than mere nutritional efficiency. The meal became an informal cultural exchange, as humans and Zephyrians sat together sharing food and stories. Admiral Crix tasted cuisine from Italy, Mexico, Thailand, and Morocco while listening to explanations about how different human societies had developed unique traditions around hospitality to strangers. He began to understand that Earth's response to his fleet was not a desperate strategy, but a genuine expression of human values. Dr. Rodriguez noticed changes in the Zephyrian crew members as the hours passed. They became more relaxed and curious, asking questions about human art, music, and literature. Several young officers expressed amazement at the diversity of human cultures and the way different societies had learned to coexist on the same planet, despite their differences. Admiral Crix found himself facing a crisis that no military training had prepared him for. His orders were clear, and his duty to the Empire was absolute. He was supposed to accept Earth's surrender and begin the process of incorporating human populations into the imperial system. But something about their unprecedented response had fundamentally changed his understanding of what conquest meant and whether it was always necessary. The Admiral requested private communication with his flagship Central Command to report on the unusual circumstances he had encountered. He explained that the human response fell outside all established protocols and that their behavior suggested capabilities that standard intelligence reports had failed to identify. He recommended delaying the conquest timeline to allow for further evaluation of the situation. The response from Zephyrian High Command was immediate and uncompromising. Admiral Crix was ordered to proceed with standard conquest procedures regardless of local circumstances. Human behavior was deemed irrelevant to imperial objectives, and any delay in establishing control would be considered dereliction of duty punishable by court-martial and execution. Admiral Crix closed the communication channel and sat in his private quarters contemplating a decision that would determine the fate of two civilizations. He had spent his entire adult life serving the Empire without question, believing that their expansion brought order and progress to primitive worlds. But his encounter with humanity had shown him something that challenged the foundation of everything he had been taught about the universe. The humans had demonstrated that advanced civilization did not require domination of others. They had shown that different species could interact with respect and mutual benefit rather than conquest and submission. Most importantly, they had proven that meeting strangers with kindness rather than suspicion could create possibilities that violence could never achieve. Dr. Rodriguez received an urgent communication from Admiral Crix requesting another meeting with the human delegation. She gathered her team and returned to the alien flagship, uncertain about what they would find, but hoping that their efforts at building understanding had made some positive impact on their hosts. The Admiral met them in the same conference chamber, but his demeanor had changed dramatically. A confidence and authority were still present, but now they were tempered with something that looked like uncertainty and perhaps even hope. He explained that he had received orders to proceed with Earth's conquest immediately, but that his experiences with the human delegation had convinced him that such action would be both unnecessary and wrong. Admiral Crix made an announcement that would reshape galactic history. He declared that his fleet would not conquer Earth, but would instead establish the first peaceful contact between the Zephyrian Empire and another spacefaring civilization. He acknowledged that this decision violated direct orders and would likely result in his court-martial, but he could no longer participate in the destruction of a species that had shown such remarkable wisdom and compassion. The Admiral's officers faced the same choice that had confronted their commander. They could follow imperial orders and continue their mission of conquest, or they could join what amounted to a military rebellion based on the radical idea that different species could coexist peacefully. One by one, they chose to support their admiral's decision to protect Earth rather than destroy it. Lieutenant Zara was among the first to pledge her support for the new approach. She explained that her interactions with humans had shown her possibilities for her own life that she had never imagined under the rigid imperial system. She wanted to be part of building something better than an empire based on fear and domination. The transformation of the Zephyrian fleet from conquerors to protectors required careful coordination with Earth's governments. President Santos received Admiral Crix's proposal for an alliance that would defend both species against imperial retribution, while demonstrating to other worlds that peaceful coexistence was possible between different civilizations. The alliance faced its first test within days as Zephyrian High Command dispatched a punitive expedition to deal with Admiral Crix's rebellion and complete Earth's conquest. But the humans and Zephyrians had spent their time well, combining human creativity with Zephyrian technology to create defensive capabilities that neither species could have achieved alone. The battle for Earth became a turning point in galactic history as the combined human-Zephyrian forces defeated the Imperial fleet through tactics that emphasized protection rather than destruction. They disabled enemy ships rather than destroying them, offering captured crews the same hospitality that had first changed Admiral Crix's perspective on conquest. The former invasion fleet became Earth's first interstellar diplomatic mission, carrying human ambassadors and cultural representatives to worlds throughout the galaxy. They shared the revolutionary idea that meeting strangers with weapons drawn was less effective than meeting them with hands extended in friendship and minds open to learning from different perspectives. Years later, as the Galactic Cooperative Council established its headquarters on a space station orbiting Earth, Admiral Crix reflected on the chain of events that had begun with humanity's impossible decision to greet warships with welcome banners. The humans had taught the galaxy something that military academies and conquest manuals had never considered. Sometimes the most powerful weapon was not a weapon at all, but the simple courage to offer friendship to strangers who arrived as enemies. Dr. Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's first interstellar cultural ambassador, often returned to that first meeting in the Crystal Conference Chamber, where two species had discovered that the distance between them was not measured in light years, but in the willingness to see the universe through each other's eyes. The humans had come seeking peace, and in doing so, they had given both species something far more valuable than victory. They had given them hope for a future where the galaxy's greatest strength would come not from who could destroy others, but from who could bring others together. Asterisk.